the temperatures are soaring across parts of North India, and that's why people are trying to seek respite by going to hill stations. But this is also proving to be very, very costly for the ecology over there, because scorching temperatures continue to affect large parts of the country, and tourists are rushing to cooler hill stations of Himachal Pradesh. Shimla, which is one of the country's most popular summer destinations, is witnessing a massive influx of visitors, leading to heavy traffic pressure on city roads, on hilly roads. And in view of the surge, Shimla Police has issued an urgent traffic advisory for tourists travelling from the Chandigarh-Solan side. Authorities have advised visitors heading to destinations beyond Shimla city, including Kufri and Mashobra, Naldehra and Narkanda, Hattu Peak, Fagu, to use the Shoghi-Mehli-Dhalli bypass route instead of entering the city. And according to police data, more than 85,000 vehicles have entered and exited Shimla region in just the last 72 hours. And officials say 33-kilometer bypass route connects travellers directly to Kufri and Dhalli, helping them avoid congestion inside Shimla city and save valuable travel time. Police officials have also highlighted that a recent trial found vehicles using the bypass route reach destinations like Mashobra nearly 20 minutes earlier than those passing through the city's traditional routes. Authorities expect tourist traffic to rise further during the summer vacation period and have urged visitors to follow the advisory to ensure smoother travel and reduce congestion on Shimla's busy roads. We have Sunil Dahiya, founder and lead analyst of Enviro Catalyst, joining us live on this broadcast. A very good afternoon to you, Sunil. How do you look at 85,000 entering and exiting Shimla in just the last 72 hours? That really tells a story of how hill stations are being overburdened by tourist traffic.
Thank you. Thanks, Deepak, for having me. No, 85,000 number, not we shouldn't just look at the traffic jams they cause in the city and inconvenience to people, but this also consumes a lot of petrol and diesel in these cars, and that being burnt where people are sitting in the jams also leads to air pollution. So it is a really not just a health emergency for people traveling, but as you mentioned, ecological hazard which we've been waiting for. And for the short time, as an immediate measure, the bypasses and alternative routes might help a little bit, but the ultimate solution to these problems is not creating more and more bypasses, creating more roads, but it is in creating public transport infrastructure so that people who want to go to the hills can still reach the hills and don't get their vehicles to these hills. They should be using trains, they should be using buses, and once they reach the hills, there should be walking infrastructure because nobody goes to the hills to drive in the cars. They go there to enjoy and walk and absorb the nature there, and that's what should be the purpose. And for that, the tourism has to be developed slightly differently. We need to think about the carrying capacity of these regions. We need to think about alternative ways of tourism where we don't invite cars but people to these hill stations.
Sunil, don't you think that, people are going to these hill stations hoping that they would find some clean air, cooler temperature, but so much traffic, so many tourists, don't you think this also contributes to air pollution in some of these hilly states?
It definitely does. And the other interesting thing about these hilly places is that the hilly places have smaller valleys between the hills. And whenever there are high emissions happening in those valleys, it takes a lot more time for the pollutants to go outside. They get trapped. As we all talk about Delhi being a bowl where the winter pollution stays, the hills are a miniature version of that. And it definitely leads to the pollution there. So that is why what I'm trying to say is that cutting down tourism might not work very well, neither for the hill stations nor for people. It has to be responsibly done, and when we say responsibly done, we have to do over with the model of building 4-lane highways, 6-lane highways, connecting these hill stations to Delhi or any other big destination, and not bringing in the public buses, not bringing in the train connectivity to it. And that is where, like, if we would have put adequate number of buses from Delhi or Chandigarh to Simla, the number of cars, these 85,000 number of cars could have been reduced to less than 10,000 or maybe even 5,000 vehicles traveling to these stations, which would have given more space for vehicles to move, which would have made the transport a bit faster, which would have reduced the petrol and diesel consumption, and it would have led to maybe those cities not diverting a lot of the space for parking these cars, and people could have walked freely, would have breathed fresh air there, and people would have really enjoyed the view rather than being stuck in traffic.
Sunil, I think that instead of, demarcating alternate routes, I think public transport must be more, made more available, because then at least people will stop, bringing in their private vehicles, which is leading to traffic jams.
And that also, what that will also do is, now the space which right now is consumed by these cars being parked there can be used to manage the waste slightly better. Maybe to even manage the solid waste coming out of the cities, or these tourists. A lot of these cities, I think we have discussed it multiple times over last few weeks, that the amount of waste that is generated from in these cities has gone beyond the carrying capacity of these hill stations, and that is why they need more space for waste to be managed better. Where will that space come from? Hills already have space crunch, and most of the space whichever is available is taken over by these cars, and that is why public transportation will not only resolve the transportation issue, it will also provide for better space for management of different kinds of waste which are generated in these cities. Obviously, we have to reduce the waste. We can't keep managing and keep generating more and managing. But we need to have better waste management facility. We need to have better water management facilities there, and all that has to be done through new assessments and study, which needs to be done, because the hill stations are already overburdened, are already overburdened beyond their carrying capacities, and that carrying capacity is connected to all components of the environment. We talk about air, water, waste, everything is much more than these hills can take right now.
Sunil, what kind of lessons can Shimla basically learn from other, such mountainous tourist destinations across the world that have balanced, environment protection and also tourism?
So the first thing would be, as we know now, we can track the number of vehicles entering these hill stations through the ANPR cameras and other things, which definitely also tells us that how other geographies in Western countries are managing, in that the number of vehicles entering a certain area will have a limit to it. There will be high entry fee for the private vehicles. There will be subsidized tickets or fares for public using the public transportation, and all that money which is generated through the cess and taxes on vehicle movement there would be used to better the city infrastructure. We definitely need to think about capping the number of cars entering there. How would we cap it? Having a quota for every day entry of cars, and that quota will also not be free quota. It should be taxed, so that not everybody can take a car from Delhi and go to Simla. So we do that, and then alternatively, the cheaper public transport should be available. So that's definitely one. The other way of managing this is, yes, it's summer vacation. People will go to these hill stations, but why are we creating an infrastructure where people only go there during the weekends? If people really want to go, we distribute that quota of entry over 7 days of the week, and that's how maybe we can redistribute the traffic flow a little bit. And the ultimate thing would be that the infrastructure there in those cities have to be bettered, have to be modified. The carrying capacity, already existing carrying capacity, has been consumed. We need to enhance that. How will we enhance that? We can't create more space on the hill station, so we'll have to take away the space taken by unnecessary amenities, and parking facility for these cars is definitely one. So we need to come up with better monitoring and implementation mechanisms using the technology available to us today.
Sunil, there's a very interesting point that you made, that, instead of just restricting these hill station getaways to the weekends, probably, there must be some kind of, offers or kind of policies that would motivate tourists to take up this journey during the week as well. And you know what? If they do it during the course of the week, it's a win-win situation for the administration as well as tourists, because there is less traffic and there is less traffic of tourists at some of the major attractions. You can get a good view, you can enjoy the scenic beauty. But the problem is that everybody thinks that only the weekend is when the hills are open.
No, definitely. So that's definitely one of the easiest mechanisms which can be applied right now. If we talk about look at, we don't talk about this and we don't see these traffic jams. Obviously, yes, there are traffic jams, but not to this intensity during the week. So that is the easiest thing, can be implemented from tomorrow, and it will ease the traffic. The bigger question would be, would that deter some of the people from traveling to hills, because there will be a quota on the weekends? That will definitely do it. And that's the entire question which we are asking is, can we sustain the n number of or exponential growth of tourists coming to these hill stations? The answer would be no. And that these kind of mechanisms of having quota for different days of the week will be one sort of mechanism to restrict it. The other things which needs to be done is, Chandigarh, cities in Haryana, as well as Delhi NCR, they need to create spaces where people can spend their weekends. They realize that the weekend, if they go on a weekend to a hill station, they'll be stuck in traffic jam. Instead, they have a better mechanism. They can go to Lodi Garden, they can go to any other such parks where they can have small picnics, can spend time with the families. So we also need to create better infrastructure in the city, which is heat resilient, heat resistant, and provides people good spaces to picnic within the cities they live in. Because nobody goes to hill just to be stuck in a jam. They go to hill to spend some good time. And if we can create those spaces in the cities where people can have good time, we might sort of take away some of that traffic and those people going from the hills. And that wouldn't take away the number of people going to the hills, wouldn't reduce so much that the revenue for the people in the hills would drop significantly, because there is obviously a growth in tourism and it will keep happening. But it will at least maintain it to a level where things can be managed slightly better in the hills.
Sunil, what I believe is that more than Shimla facing, traffic problems, I think we are witnessing the limits of probably unplanned tourism in fragile Himalayan ecosystem. What do you say?
That definitely, Simla is just an example. Look at, like, again, I'll mention last week's discussion when we were having this discussion, that even hill stations in south are facing this thing. So it is, Simla is just a poster boy, or maybe Uttarakhand, some places in Uttarakhand are a poster boy of that. But this is happening everywhere. People's paying power, their access to loans, their access to buying these vehicles is increasing, and the Instagram and other sort videos and people going to these places which are unexplored. All those things are being consumed by people, and then everybody wants to have that Instagrammable vacation. And where do we have that? In northern India, hills become the place during the winters, and it is unmanageable, and it has to be stopped. How do we stop it? We can keep asking people to not go there, but how will you kill the ambition of people who have been consuming that kind of material? That ambition has to on. The only way to sort of reduce this is, one, having policies in place where you uh, think about the carrying capacity of the hill stations, put cess and taxes on people going there, and incentivize better or sustainable ways of tourism through public transportation, walking, and other things. But at the same time, you also create those spaces where people can go and create that content which they consume, which they feel is trendy, which they feel that they are having a good time. We need a different model of how amenities in the city are providing for people and people's aspirations, so that they don't end up going through so much of trouble to going to the hills and maybe spending, like, if I go on a Friday, I have to come back on a Sunday evening. Technically, I have 48 hours to enjoy, to travel, and for everything. And if I'm stuck in the traffic for 16 hours both ways, how much time am I really spending on the hills? Maybe 5 hours, 8 hours, and that's it. Why can't we provide such spaces where people can spend this for 5 hours on a weekend in our cities? Why can't we stop that? We can do it. And like, we just have to invest in that kind of infrastructure.
Sunil, we're running out of time, but I want a quick answer from you on, the larger picture. Because all of this is happening because climate change is driving, heat-driven migration from cities to hill stations. And it's not about, planting trees. It's about saving the trees that we already have, right? Because if you plant trees, it'll take a couple of dozen years for it to grow to its full capacity. So larger issue is climate change. How do we tackle that?
You are very right. That, so, in the name of running away from this heat from the cities, we go to the hill stations, and those hill stations, the approach roads to those hill stations are created by destroying or cutting down these thousands of trees. Every year we hear this for Himachal and Uttarakhand, and that we are in sort of a loop where we cut down trees, where we consume more fossil fuels that heats up the planet, and then we want to run away to these places, and that again consumes energy and it again gets heated up. So it's a cyclic loop. How do we stop it? Is one, our fossil fuel consumption, as an individual, as a family, as a city, as a state, or as a country, has to come down so that we can reduce a little bit of this climate change, our contribution to this climate change. And as you mentioned, keeping the trees intact is one of the most effective ways to have microclimates within the cities and at a larger ecosystem level. If we cut down trees, these are the lungs of the geography wherever we live in, and it will never be able to regrow trees. You mentioned couple of dozens of years. I'll say it might take even 50 years, and also depends on what kind of plantation we do. So saving the trees wherever they are, reducing our carbon emissions as much as we can, and then trying to be local, consume local, have our picnics in the cities where we live, is definitely something which we as individuals can do, but nothing of that sort can really be done by people until unless there is infrastructure support, there is government policies in place, and the government thinks like that. The government has to be the first actor in that, and people will follow.
Most importantly, Sunil, I believe that people should also look inward. The more we, jam these places, the lesser we'll have these kind of places for us to, get away from, or rather escape from the kind of heat that we're facing. But thank you, Sunil, for joining me on this very important conversation.